Hello and welcome back to Theoretically Practical. This week we're going to be switching from the mechanical fan to an electric fan from Mishimoto on my 1992 200 TDI right-hand drive Land Rover Defender 90. Anyways, this applies to any vehicle anyways that you want to convert. Now, you might say, well, why convert, right? I mean, this is called a viscous coupling fan, and what that means is that you can spin this by hand. The hotter it gets, the harder it will be to spin that by hand, is my understanding of how these work. So that when it's cool, it's not spinning quite as fast, yada yada. I mean, they're not bad. They're supposed to be pretty reliable, but people have issues with them from time to time. I think this one's actually leaking its fluid out. I think that's what the discoloration is on it. And then, of course, in order for that to work, you have to have this enormous cowling. And because this cowl has to be pretty tight around this fan, the more gap there is, the more air gets by. It's not super efficient. There is one issue with what I'm putting on, is that this also covers the intercooler, whereas my electric fan will not. And at some point, I may rectify that, but for now, we're just worried about this old girl. And the other reason is, though, is because right now, I mean, I have room for activities in here. I mean, you know, there's a lot of empty space. You put this thing in here, and I mean, even looking at it, you're like, how does that even fit in there? Well, it goes the other way around. You know, get it right anyways. It goes the other way around, but you can see there's no clearance to where the viscous fan would mount. And in order to get it in, you actually have to put the fan in, at least in my experience, you gotta put the fan in the hole, jam the whole thing down with all the hoses disconnected. It's a complete pain in the ass. And since this is a vehicle that requires, you know, more than the average amount of maintenance in that arena, because it wants a timing belt every 60,000 miles is the top end, and then in extreme conditions, which probably given the amount of miles I'm going to put on this year, I would go into the extreme condition, which says every 30,000 miles. So it's probably going to be every 3 or 4 years for me anyways, doing a timing belt, which is, when you start at this point, it's not that bad. You guys saw me do that in a previous episode. It's pretty easy. You know, anyone can do it. You just got to do it. So that's why I want to go with the electric fan. The other thing I like is, I went with a Mishimoto fan. I think it's just a 15-inch fan. It's a 14. I wanted a 15 because of the size limitations. A 15 would have just filled that space just a little bit better. But you know what? We don't always get what we want. So I'm going to live with it. And anyways, it's waterproof. I like electric fan stuff. So the other reason to put an electric fan, a huge reason, is because this little bastard here is a horsepower thief. It's a thief of horsepower. There's another show with like Freiberger on it, whatever. They did Engine Masters with the old guy that runs the dyno and whatever. In any case, they did one on mechanical fans. They tried a bunch. I don't think they tried a viscous coupling fan, but they were all mechanical fans. And they found out that basically the best of them only stole 15 horsepower, and the worst one stole over 30 horsepower. Now, I'm not going to get even 15 horsepower out of this modification, simply because those were gasoline engines. They're revving to, you know, 6,500 RPM. This revs out at like 3,500 RPM. It's mechanically governed, which is why you don't get a tachometer, because you can't over rev it. It just gets to a certain point, and that's all it's got. So I'm not going to be getting a tremendous amount of horsepower gain, but I think I'll get some reliability, because a lot of people kind of have issues with these, I think. So I should be gaining some reliability. And in a vehicle with only about 120 horsepower, if I gain 10 horsepower for, I got $150 into everything I bought for this. If I get 10 horsepower for $150, ask any gearhead you know. That's cheap money for horsepower. It's pocket change compared to, you know, spending 10 grand to rebuild an engine with slightly different components so you could rev it up 500 RPM higher and get, you know, horsepower is expensive. This is cheap horsepower. I think it's good insurance for the long run, so that's why we're doing it. So we're gonna hop in. All right, well, here's the parts I have to do the job. I've got a couple pieces of, it's I don't know, metric angle iron aluminum. It's 3/4 by 1/8 by 36-inch aluminum stock. So you might also ask, you know, like, why didn't I just buy the whole kit? Revotech makes a great kit for this, you know? And if you just want to bolt something on and you're not very handy, it's great, but it's like $300 and something. I've spent $150 on my stuff, and I did spend too much though. I bought the Revotech kit because I thought it would be pretty spiffy. This was $85. I don't see it, is what I would say. I do like, the reason why I ended up ordering it is because I've done this installation before in an old Isuzu Trooper I had, and I like the thermostat. I like that it's adjustable, which is nice, and I like that it's got this nice clean wiring loom on it. I thought the rest of the wiring would be cleaner, but it just isn't, so whatever. So yeah, don't buy the Revo. I thought the Revotech wiring harness was like, oh, it's $80. That's like half the. No, don't bother with it unless you're buying the whole kit. You can get these things on eBay for like $20. They're fine. I mean, relays, they're a dime a dozen. The only other thing that came in the box is some zip ties and some hose clamps and a little cover for this, which I guess is kind of nice too. So I will be using it because I bought it. It's perfectly adequate. I just, if I knew what it contained exactly and held it in my hand for $80, I would have said, nah, I'll just spend like $30 on whatever, and it would be fine. So I got some bullet connectors to do some of the connections with because the fan has bullet connectors on it, so I'm going to stick with that. I think it's a reasonable solution. I'm going to go with a puller fan, so the fan's going to mount on the backside down here. That's the preferred method if you have the room. I'm also going to be mounting this fan. It's basically mounted just a little bit off of the surface. I'm going to get as close as I can. I'm going to put the mounts on the outside of the tabs and bolt them up from underneath, which they have a countersunk head, which I think is for that purpose. You don't want it to be touching the radiator because it'll just rub right through that. And so you do want it to be off of the radiator somewhat. You could maybe put foam in there. I don't think I would. Again, this is a pretty small diesel. And while I do intend to take it off-roading and whatnot, I'm not gonna beat on it so hard that it needs the best cooling system in the world. So it doesn't put out a lot of heat. These things, if you've ever run one of these in the wintertime, it takes a while before you have anything resembling heat coming out of the heating vents, and even then it's not good. We're going to be putting in a diesel-fired heater at some point in this when I get really, really cold, but that's later, after it's driving, which is still, it's still a long ways off. But anyways, so that's what we're going to do. It does have a couple of these nice little mounting studs here and here, but unfortunately, if I put one on there, I'm way off on that one. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, so it's not even, if it was within a ½ an inch or a ¼ inch, I could play games with where I drill holes on the aluminum or whatnot. I just don't. I'm going to try to make that up. Now that I think about it, I'm going to play games with the aluminum and try to get that to fit. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say. There's also a little lip down below. So I'm going to, put on my carpenter's hat, do some making. Everything other than this will be different than this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. I'm going to try to avoid welding. You shouldn't need to. And if you got to drill holes in like this top cap surface here, it unbolts and with 4 bolts. So take the bolts off and drill it outside if you can to avoid punching holes in your radiator. You'll be happy you did and sad if you don't. So, cool. All right. I'm going to get rocking. you can just chuck the idea of not welding off the table, because I kind of looked at the situation and was like, I don't really want to modify this. I just hate to hack up stuff if I can avoid it. So what I did is I took a piece of aluminum here and put some slots in it, because I have a little milling machine and because I definitely didn't drill the holes in the wrong place the first time, and bolted this here. And then down here, there's these two little pockets. And I'm gonna put the bottom of it right down in there. And I kind of like that, because that means I'll be at the point where I can take 2 screws off, pull a little fan out, you know, just in case I want to. So I made the width of this to align so that if you can see that this side is not sticking out and this side is not sticking out. So what I can do is take this piece of angle iron here and put it like this, but underneath this other piece. Yeah, it should work out just fine. It's not going to be a picture frame because both of the top and the bottom are pointed downwards. So I just want to cut those pieces so I can take some measurements and make some marks. And then I'm going to just weld it together. And honestly, so I'm going to do the 2 joint at the bottom with the L, like thusly, you can't tell. And at the top, there's just going to be a little square hole at the end. I was thinking about filling it in and cutting it like that, but I don't have a lot of good tools to cut aluminum with, so I'm using my circular saw, because, yeah, that's another pro tip. You can use your regular old circular saw with just a cheap old construction blade to cut aluminum. People also tell you, oh, you turn the blade back. Don't turn the blade backwards. That doesn't do anything good for anything for anybody ever. I've heard that for cutting roofing, for cutting aluminum. I've tried them both. It doesn't work. Just doesn't. So, but you might put a little paraffin wax or beeswax on it. It'll help keep the aluminum from sticking, and, you know, cut quick. But any woodworking tool, pretty much chop saw, whatever, you can cut aluminum with it. You got to be a little careful, and purchasing the right blade if you want to do a lot of it is worth the investment. But a cheap old construction blade and my DeWalt circular saw is how I'm doing all the cuts on this, and they're going to come out just fine. So I'm going to take some more measurements, and then I'm going to lay it all out on my little welding table and clamp it down and hopefully make some magic happen. To keep this from rattling, because there's a little bit of extra room in the bottom here, what I'm going to do is make this, I'm going to take probably a 1/16 or maybe an 1/8 of an inch off the total distance to lift this up a little bit so that I can put a rubber seal down this. And then that should mean I have something I can stab into these nicely and bolt on there, just like factory. And then, of course, if I do regret this, or if I break it and I need it right away, well, I'm not going to get rid of the old parts. I'm just going to put them upstairs in the cold storage until I need them, because, you know, you never get rid of good parts, or reasonably good parts, or parts you think might be better than the broken parts that you might end up with. All right, so here's the frame all laid out. So you got the slots in the top. You've got the bars like that. Those are the holes on the end I mentioned earlier, and they're going to come down to this, and then that will sit in the lip. So that's what it's going to look like. I guess you could picture frame it up here, do the diagonal. I just didn't. So, and it's only carrying a pretty lightweight fan. I don't think this is going to see a ton of abuse. So I'm going to tack it all up and weld it, and then I'll be back. All right, so I got the frame reasonably tacked together. And if everything went right, then this, oh yeah, absolutely what I was looking for. Fits nicely like this. This is actually, though, going to mount, so it's actually going to mount like this, which will bring this face just a little closer to the fan. This will be like an 1/8 of an inch gap, which is fine. That looks right to me. I'm going to just test fit it in the vehicle right now, and if it fits, then I will finish weld it, because I did check out the square. It's pretty square. It's pretty flat. It'll be just fine. All right. Into the bottom slots. Uh-oh. Never even thought about that. This is in my way. Well, I'm going to first loosen this, move that out of the way, see if that gives me enough clearance. If it doesn't, then I will cry. No. If it doesn't, then what do I do? All right, guys. Well, here's the frame I made up. This is the back side. You can see it now has an extra hole next to the slot for, you know, just so that things are actually where they're supposed to be. So it just drops into those, pops onto that, and that's gonna be pretty clean. I am gonna have to tighten up the bottom. There's just a little bit of slop there, and either I can bend that tab in a little bit, or I can put a little piece of rubber in it, which is what I intend to do, is put some rubber in both of these, and that'll take the wiggle waggle out of it. I'm gonna mount the fan up and put it in and see how she looks. All right, guys, now it comes down to the wiring. So we'll talk about this wiring harness because I think you should just make your own in the future. You just need a pretty simple relay. That's all this is. Just you can buy them with the pigtails on. I don't know why the warranty is void if removed, but I also don't care. And then you'll have something that looks like this probably. Now that I have this, what I think I would do if I was to do it again, I would drill and tap out one of these holes and screw a sensor in. You know, people talk about these leaking. I used one before. I had no problem with it. The only difference is this is a slightly different switch design as the cheapies you get on eBay, but there's nothing wrong with this at all. And all it's doing is taking in power from an always-on source. This should be ideally connected directly to your battery, maybe with a fuse in there, but you want this to be able to run when your engine is off. So red wire directly to the battery. The blue wire goes to the fan. And then the black wire on this is the ground, and that's it. And so you can see that's all you need to hook up. It's a pretty simple setup, but that's all you're really dealing with. You know, you want a good size relay for this. I bet this is a 30 amp. Bigger could be better, it wouldn't hurt, but 30 amps probably more than sufficient. And so I'm gonna mount this bad boy by the tab. I think I'm gonna mount it right to the side of this somewhere, like right about there, because I've got such a limited length of this loomed up cable. And then I'm gonna mount I'm gonna get the thermal switch stuck. I'm gonna mount this right in this section of hose here. It could only really go here or here. You need a straight section of hose that obviously won't go in the middle of a bend. That won't work. But right here, I think I can fit it in, and that'll keep the cord short. And then you're gonna hook up the blue wire, which is just the output of the relay, and you're gonna connect that up to, I don't know if this is which way this fan will run. It can run both directions. So we're gonna start by hooking it up to the blue wire and see how that works. And then we'll just hook the black wire to ground. So what I'm gonna do is make an extension for the black wire with a bullet connector, because I kind of like the idea of being able to take off a couple of screws and take the whole thing out. I don't know. It's for serviceability, which I will never use if I install it correctly, but if I do it half-assed, I'll need it every 5 minutes. So, and I have bullet connectors, so we might as well use them. And so the black wire and the ground for this is just gonna run down, and I'm gonna bolt it into the frame. A lot of the grounds on this are questionable, and by questionable, I mean junk. So grounding it to the frame, I know the frame has a good ground. There's a secondary ground to the frame underneath there as well. And then this is gonna go to the starter motor right where it connects to the battery. Everything else connects there anyways. So it's the right sort of setup. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mount up everything except the temperature switch. And then we'll be able to put a battery in it, and I'll use like a heat gun on this so that it'll warm up, and then the fan should turn on, and then it should cycle. This is adjustable, which I do like the adjustability. Like I said, it's just $80 seems like too much for this, but whatever. I'm cheap. I'm extremely cheap. You know, I mean, if I wasn't cheap, I would have just bought the $300 kit from Revotech, and I probably wouldn't be done any quicker either. So. But the real takeaway is you've got your temperature switch attached to here, and Even if you use one of the aftermarket ones, you're gonna have to run a ground to this block. Usually they're a one-wire switch, so you run a ground to this block, and then you run the switch, and this little temperature switch in here switches the ground side. When the ground side switches, it fires the relay. That's what I did in my old Isuzu Trooper, and the whole setup was like 65, 70 bucks. It worked great, for the fan included. I bought a cheap fan. I don't suggest you buy a cheap fan. Buy a nice fan. This one was only like $75. You know, you can spend a couple $100s on a fan, but don't. So yeah, onwards and upwards. All right, I found my grounding spot. I know I'm gonna ground. I just want to show a little bit about grounding. So I ended up that the fan wire was long enough that I could cut the end off and put this on it. I don't have a crimp-on lug at the moment. I'm sure this will screw me one day, but I'm doing it anyways. This is not about how to ground properly, but this end is fine. So I drilled a hole in this little mount here because they can both reach it, and also I would have gone on the side there to keep it more away from the front, but I just don't have any room. You'll notice that's all sanded down nice and clean, and this is the bolt. I'm just gonna bolt it through the backside. Bob's your uncle, right? Walk away. No. On both of the joints and everything, I'm gonna smear some of this dielectric grease, just especially where the interface is. Now, a lot of people are gonna probably, well, all 17 of you are gonna say, whoa, 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 or at least one of you is. You know, dielectric grease, that stops electricity, and you're right, but it stops the wrong electricity. This will keep that interface nice and clean. It'll keep water out. It'll keep particulate out, all sorts of junk out. Well, not particulate. I don't know why I said that. Anyways, it'll make the connection last a lot longer. And in fact, like I've worked on a bunch of old Japanese motorcycles before, and one of the first things I do on them, usually if there's any sort of electrical problem, is take every single connection apart, clean it as thoroughly as I can, put this in every single bullet connector, as much as it'll take. You can't put too much. Goob it all up, put it back together, and you would be surprised the amount of time that takes a bike that doesn't run, has poor spark, some other issue, and just fixes it. So, you know, the real problem, the real killer is corrosion and water getting in your joints. This keeps it out. I know it's dielectric, I know it doesn't conduct electricity, but it makes the electricity you want to conduct better. And I know I go on a rant about this, but anybody that knows me or worked on me with anything, you know, especially a buddy calls me up and says, you know, oh, I got this electrical problem. I was like, well, did you clean all the connections first and put dielectric grease on? The answer is usually, well, no, but I want it to be something else. And it's not something else. It's your bad electrical connections. Just clean them up, all right? Anyways, so yeah, rant over for now. All right, guys, so I got the thing all wired in. I ended up running it straight all the way back to the battery. It seemed like a better option. I may revisit it, but it was easy enough to do. There was plenty of space. You know, I just kind of ran it down the top of the rail and zip tied it. Like I said, I'll be revisiting this, but it's all wired in. I'm ready to test it, and I lost my, oh, there's my tiny little screwdriver. All right, so I'm gonna heat this up. All right, that should be enough. And then I'm gonna turn the little potentiometer there down, and the fan's blowing, it's coming the right direction. You can feel the suction on this side. Yeah. So it's definitely moving some air. And then if I turn it back up again, turns right off. So at this point, I'm ready to take the plunge, cut this, though that doesn't quite look like the right side. I'm gonna trust it. I'm just gonna trust it. So I'm gonna slice this, take like, I might not take anything out of it if I can get away with it, but if I have to, I'll just take the width of this little house out of it. There's a little lid for this, but before I put the lid on, I'm gonna pack it up with dielectric grease, because otherwise this is a great little spot. Even though it's sealed, the top of the pot is not necessarily sealed. And I'm just gonna goob it on up because it'll never, you know, harden or glue up or anything like that. And it'll keep the water out. It basically just displace it. So slide that bad boy in, put the hose clamps to it, and this is done. For now. Like I said, the power line I'm not super thrilled with. I like how the ground worked out. You know, it's just nice and hidden there, but pretty easy to access. So if you ever wanted to remove this off, you got to disconnect the positive line, which is the red line, and you got to disconnect this ground. It's not quick clip like it was going to be, but the relay, let me push it back down out of the way. There we go. The relay is right there. So the relay is mounted to the frame of this. I put a little hole down there so I can zip tie all the wires to it just to keep them sort of semi-clean. You really want, you know, no loose wires like that because, you know, a branch could roll up under your undercarriage and one little bitty twig can just boop that wire, and then you don't have a fan. And it's way easier to fix stuff, well, in a clean garage than it is out on the trail. I don't know that my current working space is better than the middle of the woods, but it does have power and light, so that's nice. All right, so it's all installed in the line. That's what it looks like. I really think the diameter of this was smaller than I would have liked it to be. I think it's going to seal up just fine, but I would have liked it to be a tighter fit. It was a little bit loose. So again, do this yourself. You can do it. It's not that hard. I welded the frame together because that was the easiest thing for me to do. But if you don't have a welder, you can drill, mount your frame together. You can go to a junkyard and get the fan. Apparently for this, a lot of people use one out of a Ford Taurus, or they call it a Ford Mondeo in jolly old England. And you can hack that up, and apparently that does a good job for this. I went this route because it was easier for me to get the parts and get them and know that they were good quality and yada yada yada. No, this is definitely a great, great little upgrade for your vehicle, and it's pretty inexpensive, and it's pretty much free horsepower, especially if you got a big high revving engine. This engine doesn't rev as high. I'm not going to get quite as much out of it, but I will get something. And the next time I need to do my timing chest, my life is going to be a lot easier because this fan, I can't tell you how much of a pain in the balls it is to get that fan off with the housing on. And then, of course, you drop the fan in the plastic housing. It runs right up against the radiator. It's going to ding it up. It's terrible. Put an electric fan in. Have a great week. And, oh yeah, if you're not subscribed and you're still watching, which you're probably not, you know, click it. Why not? It's free.